For many Chinese students in the University of Sydney, finding a place to live becomes one of the first problems they face after getting their student visa. Before they can fully settle into university life, they often need to work out where to stay and how to navigate an unfamiliar housing system. University accommodation is the easiest starting point. However, places are limited and not everyone can get one. As a result, many students are pushed into the private rental market very early, and this makes us explore the unequal conditions Chinese students in USYD may encounter in the rental system. At the level of housing access, inequality is produced through the different options available to students. Private rentals are often difficult to access because the application process may require local resources such as a phone number, banking arrangement, and familiarity with the Australian rental system. Student apartments may appear to be a simpler option because they are easier to apply for, but they are often expensive and offer very limited quantity. As a result, Chinese international students are not entering a fair housing market with equal choices, but a system in which both major options involve different forms of disadvantage. At the macro level, inequality is built into the NSW rental system through its official renting requirements. NSW Fair Trading's Residential Tenancy Agreement asks tenants to provide an email address, a valid phone number that can receive messages, internet access, a way to make payments, and bank account details from an Australian financial institution. These requirements suggest that the rental system is designed for people who are already settled in Australia and already connected to local phone and banking services. For Chinese international students who are preparing to study at the University of Sydney, this can create unequal access because they may not have these local conditions before they arrive. As Jiayi argues, policy catalogues should not be seen as natural or fixed, because objects do not exist as essences. They emerge as objects for thought in practices. In this case, the NSW rental system helps shape the idea of a legitimate tenant as someone who already has access to local phone, banking, and digital payment systems.
This project also draws on Mahboob's discussion of material biological and socio-semiotic systems. Mahboob argues that people experience the world through a natural hierarchy of senses, including sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste, and that these senses shape how individuals respond to surroundings. This idea is useful for analyzing housing because housing is not only an economic issue but also an bodily and spatial experience. For example, overcrowded shared housing may affect privacy, noise levels, smell, and personal space. The author also explains that material biological systems and the socio-semiotic system interact with each other, meaning that physical conditions influence how people create meanings, beliefs, and responses to the world around them. This is important for our topic because housing conditions do not only affect where students stay, but also reshape what home, safety, comfort, and belonging means to them. For international students, limited accommodation, unstable rental arrangement, or crowded living environments may therefore influence both their physical experience and their senses of security and belonging.
At the macro level, housing inequality for Chinese international students at the University of Sydney is produced through everyday screening practices, while rental platforms act as the first gate, sorting applicants based on expansions of income, experience, and local credibility. Application forms and supporting documents do not simply verify tenants, but define who is considered legitimate. Terms such as stable income, rental history, and reference construct an ideal tenant and shape who can be recognized within the system. During inspections, applicants are not only viewing the property, they are also being observed and informally assessed through their language, behavior, and familiarity with the process. Rejection is not simply bad luck or individual failure, it is often the outcome of a filtering system that ranks some applicants as less desirable before they are very fully considered. These exclusions become visible in space as students are pushed into overcrowded and lower quality housing that compresses privacy, movement, and everyday comfort. When accessible housing is limited, students are pushed further away from campus, and long commutes become part of the cost of exclusion. As mainstream rental systems become harder to access, many Chinese international students turn to Xiaohongshu, WeChat, and Chinese language housing advertisement, which often lack stability and protection. This is not just about housing difficulty, but about how Chinese international students at the University of Sydney are positioned as less desirable tenants. Now let's walk around and see how other people think of it.
Because I was rejected from many other places, so I had to look for options that were easier to get, even if the conditions were not very good. It's a world of difference. Back in China, the whole process is much more straightforward. You don't have to provide a massive file of documents like rental history or proof of income. Also, you don't have to go through those intense inspections where you are standing in line with 20 other people just to see a studio apartment.
What did you need to prepare when applying for housing?
We need to prepare a lot of documents like my student visa status and my offer letter and a lot of bank documents like my bank statements, proof of balance, and even the rental history. But since I'm new to Australia, I don't have especially the bank statements ready to submit to the landlord, so it's really hard for me.
It was a pretty exhausting process. I spent weeks constantly refreshing apps and social media groups. Eventually, I found the place through a listing online, but I had to move extremely fast. I submitted all my document, ID, bank status, the whole lot things, and the agent basically did a background check before deciding I was a suitable tenant. It was a lot of pressure. I think it put international students in a really tough spot. We are often at a disadvantage because we don't always meet the standard criteria, like having a long Australian rental history or a local income. It feels like we are starting from a weaker position in a already crowded market.
Did other students help you find housing?
Yes, like we have a lot of chat groups since peers get around. So within those chat groups, they will post information about available housing in different areas, and you could ask them for do you want to find a roommate or stuff like that. So information like that would help me to find proper housing in Australia.
Definitely, the biggest issue is the commute. It takes me over an hour to get to the office every single day. By the time I get home, I'm usually pretty wiped out. It's tiring, and it definitely eats into my personal time, whether that's for resting, staying active, or just catching up with other things I enjoy.
And do you think these student networks are important for finding housing?
Yeah, I think they do help a lot because you could ask them for advice since some of them already lived and studied here for a few years, so they could tell you about like details you should pay attention to when signing the tenancy contract, or like how to do international bank transfer to pay the rents and stuff like that. So I think they are really helpful when I'm new to this like housing system, help me to navigate them.
Before we even step off the plane, many of us have already gained information from Chinese social media platforms like the Red Note. These are not just chat rooms, they are living, breathing, supportive self-empowerment systems that we built ourselves. When someone posts a landlord who accepts Chinese bank statement, soon some other students and landlords will find it feasible. Someone shares a bad inspection experience, and a dozen others would know which agent to avoid. Someone asks how to get an Australian bank account as soon as they arrived. Different seniors reply with step-by-step guides. We translate confusing lease clause. We help each other understand what bond lodgement means. These are the things the official housing system does not teach us, so we teach ourselves. This is what Mahboob calls subaltern practice. It is not about waiting for the system to change. It is about creating alternative frameworks right here, right now, that enable us and our communities. It is about turning our shared struggle into shared strengths.
As international students, we are not only studying this issue, but also experiencing it in our daily lives. When we search for housing, we also face problems such as unfamiliar rental system and lack of local resources. This experience helps us understand how some requirements like rental history or local contact details can create difficulties for international students. At the same time, we are not completely powerless. As shown in our positive discourse analysis, international students often support each other through online groups and shared information. We have also relied on these networks when looking for housing. This shows that even in difficult situations, people can still find ways to help each other. This position allows us to see both sides of the issue. The structural disadvantages faced by international students and the ways they actively respond to these challenges. It also reminds us that our understanding of this topic is shaped by our own experience.